What you are about to learn will change your understanding of what you thought you knew before. We will lift the veil of mystery over one of the most enigmatic and shocking secrets of ancient Egypt. What if we told you that the country was once ruled by Black Pharaohs? Sounds incredible, doesn't it? But archaeologists have irrefutable evidence that has rewritten history. You will be amazed to learn about the Black Pharaohs of Egypt. This discovery is capable of completely changing our understanding of the past. Want to learn the shocking truth that the sands of Sudan have been hiding from us? Then you must watch this video until the end, and be prepared that after this, your world will never be the same. The rulers of ancient Egypt, known as pharaohs, left an indelible mark on the history of mankind. Their power lasted for many centuries, and they were considered the embodiment of divine authority on earth. However, although the pharaohs were the supreme rulers of Egypt, not all of them were native to this land. The history of ancient Egypt includes 31 dynasties of pharaohs, each of which contributed to the development and prosperity of the state. Among the last dynasties, a special place is occupied by the Macedonian one, founded by Ptolemy I, one of the closest companions of the legendary military leader Alexander the Great. In 332 BC, Ptolemy I seized power in Egypt and began a new era in the history of the country. The most famous representative of this dynasty was Cleopatra, whose beauty, intelligence, and political acumen became legendary. However, it wasn't just the Macedonians who left their mark on the Egyptian throne. One of the most famous queens of ancient Egypt, Nefertiti, was originally from Mitanni, a small state located between the powerful empires of the Hittites and Assyrians. Furthermore, between 751 and 667 BC, Egypt was ruled by Black Pharaohs from Nubia, a region located south of Egypt. These rulers, known as the Black Pharaohs, brought their culture and traditions to Egyptian society and left a significant mark on the country's history. An international group of researchers, consisting of scientists from France and Switzerland, made a stunning discovery in northern Sudan. They found the so-called statues of the Black Pharaohs. These granite sculptures, carved from durable stone, bore the names of the kings in whose honor they were created. Inscriptions located on the back and feet of each statue allow for the identification of the immortalized rulers and the determination of the approximate period of their reign. The so-called Black Pharaohs, rulers of Nubia, a kingdom located south of ancient Egypt, controlled vast territories along the banks of the Nile. Historical sources refer to this state as Kush. Despite its power, Nubia at one point in its history fell under the rule of its more powerful neighbor, Egypt. Researchers hypothesize that the discovered statue repository was created by the Egyptians. This is evidenced by the fact that many of the monuments were intentionally damaged. Some had missing heads and feet. Perhaps this was the conquerors' way of demonstrating their superiority over the conquered people and their rulers. Kush was often portrayed as a land of primitive savages rather than an advanced civilization. However, as the first finds began to emerge from under the sands, it became clear that the Black people also possessed a high level of development, as evidenced by majestic pyramids and other monumental structures. Moreover, some Nubian rulers managed to ascend the Egyptian throne and leave their mark on the history of this great country. One of the most impressive discoveries was the main temple of the sun, as well as unique pyramids erected in honor of the Black rulers. These monumental structures were significantly different from their Egyptian counterparts, representing solid constructions without internal chambers. The burial chambers of the rulers were located deep underground, hidden from prying eyes. The Nubians, seeking to protect the rest of their deceased kings, made considerable efforts to seal the entrances to the tombs and make them inaccessible to looters. However, despite all precautions, looters still managed to find the secret passages and plunder the tombs. In addition to architectural masterpieces, researchers were fortunate to find a list of Nubian rulers covering the period from 1200 BC to 200 AD. However, scientists have not yet managed to decipher all the names. The Nubians, although they borrowed the hieroglyphic writing system from the Egyptians, made their unique modifications and additions. For many centuries, ancient Egypt and Nubia, located next to each other, experienced periods of peaceful coexistence and mutually beneficial trade, as well as fierce confrontation. During the reign of Pharaoh Senusret, who occupied the Egyptian throne from 1970 to 1934 BC, the Egyptians managed to conquer much of Nubia. However, soon after, warlike Hyksos tribes invaded Egypt, allowing the Nubians to take advantage of the situation and regain most of the lost territories. Despite this, the Egyptians continued to raid their southern neighbors, capturing cattle and enslaving the local population. The situation remained tense until a change of power occurred in Egypt. The Nubians living in the northern regions, still under Egyptian occupation, decided to take advantage of this transitional period and revolted. However, the new pharaoh Thutmose I, who came to power in 1538 BC, changed the traditional tactics. The Egyptian army, equipped with a new type of weapon, chariots borrowed from the Hyksos, was highly mobile and had great destructive power. Archers placed in chariots could quickly move across the battlefield and deliver crushing blows to the enemy. Crossing 3 Nile cataracts, the troops of Thutmose I dealt a crushing defeat to the Nubians and established control over most of their territory. The Egyptians captured a huge number of trophies, including cattle, ivory, slaves, gold, and other valuables. This victory strengthened Egypt's power and expanded its influence in the region. However, despite Thutmose Ii's successes, the Nubians did not resign themselves to defeat. Under the next pharaoh, Thutmose II, they again revolted, seeking freedom from Egyptian rule. After the Nubians' uprising against Egyptian rule during the reign of Thutmose II, the ruler quickly responded to this threat. He sent punitive expeditions to the rebellious regions, which managed to suppress the revolt and restore control over the territory. However, despite the Egyptians' efforts, their power gradually began to weaken. Internal strife and turmoil undermined the country's unity, and the nomes, small autonomous administrative units, one by one broke away from the metropolis, proclaiming independence. Thus, around 1000 BC, the kingdom of Napata emerged in the ancient land of Kush, becoming a new center of power in the region. The first known ruler of Napata was King Alara. He introduced a system of government largely similar to the Egyptian one, demonstrating the profound influence of Egyptian culture on Nubian civilization. Official records were kept in the Egyptian language, and the kingdom's supreme deity was declared Amun, one of the main gods of the Egyptian pantheon. Strengthening their position within the country, the Nubians decided to expand their territories to the north, aiming to unite under their rule lands related by language and religion. King Kashta, the nephew of Alara, managed to gain the allegiance of the southern nomes of Egypt. Moreover, the high priestess of Amun in Thebes agreed to adopt the daughter of the conqueror and transfer her high position to her. However, the task of fully uniting the country was completed only by Kashta's son, King Pi. In 751 BC, he achieved a decisive victory and became the first Black Pharaoh in history. Pi, the first Black Pharaoh, managed to gain the support of the influential strata of Egyptian society, the priests and nobility, which allowed him to consolidate his power on the throne. This turning point in the history of ancient Egypt marked the beginning of over a century of rule by Black kings. During these decades, the country experienced an era of flourishing and prosperity. However, a new threat was approaching from the north, the powerful Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians, armed with advanced iron weapons, were a formidable adversary for the Egyptians, who still relied on bronze arms. In fierce battles, the Assyrian army emerged victorious, forcing the Black Pharaohs to seek refuge in the south of the country beyond the Nile cataracts, in the very lands from where they had once risen to power. Despite their defeat, the kingdoms of Meroe and Napata, which emerged in Nubia, managed to maintain their independence and sovereignty for several subsequent centuries. However, history never stands still, and new conquerors took the place of the Assyrians. The Romans, having conquered Egypt, moved south, striving to expand their domains. But despite their military might, the Romans also failed to establish complete control over the vast territories beyond the Sahara Desert. After several centuries, the lands of Meroe were plundered by the Abyssinians from the Kingdom of Axum. This event marked a turning point in the history of the region. The local population gradually began to forget the Egyptian gods and abandon the use of their language. The ancient traditions and beliefs that once flourished under the rule of the Black Kings gradually faded into the past. Changes affected not only the cultural and religious sphere, but also nature itself. The climate became increasingly arid, and the desert relentlessly expanded, swallowing once flourishing lands. The sand gradually covered the majestic temples, statues and pyramids, silent witnesses to the former power of the people once ruled by the Black Pharaohs.